It's Monday. The day is here. Myles Turner makes his return to Indianapolis. What's the reception we expect him to get? We check in with Tony East of Locked On Pacers coming up next on today's Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. My name is Justin Garcia. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day each and every day. You can hear me on the Bucks radio network once again tonight with the Bucks in Indianapolis to take on Myles Turner's former team, the Indiana Pacers. Today's episode of the show brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. No better man to give us the insights on the fan reaction in Indiana and what to expect in this return for Myles Turner than Tony East, who you can hear on Locked On Pacers and has been covering the team for quite some time now. So we check in with Tony East to get his thoughts on tonight's matchup. All right, let's get into it here. Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined by Tony East, who you can hear on Locked On Pace. And at this point, Tony, our audience knows who you are. We've had two straight meetings in the playoffs. We dug into the signing of Myles Turner, so there should be no one wondering who is this guy that we're talking to now. This one kind of snuck up on me of like, oh, wow. Yeah, it's already here. Myles Turner returns to Indiana. I mean, I guess let's just start with this. What do you expect the reception to be?
Well, Justin, it's not often you can get the two hosts to cover the teams that have won the East and the NBA Cup together. I mean, that is the real Pacers and Bucks synergy, right?
It's going to be. They weren't a part of rivalry week.
Which is so rivalry week is so dumb. There was a Bucks Heat game one year that I was like, these are not rivals. What? Anyway,
well, I mean, it's Bucks Thunder this year.
Yeah, well, they got to get the Cup rematch anyway. Myles Turner's return is going to be fascinating to me because 10 years is forever in the NBA, right? As you know, and it's so rare that a player is there for that long. And I have like a basketball take, and the Warriors really put this in me, but like, would you as a fan of a team see a player like grow up and go through both lows and highs? You become more attached to them, even in their low moments and high moments. And that happened with Myles Turner with the Pacers. And then they were half of a game away from winning a championship. And the thought was like, yep, they're going to keep him easy peasy. They'll have, a pretty good team this year. And then when Haliburton's back, they'll be a contender for however long they have this core. And then he went to the Bucks. And the reasoning as it came out after was pretty clearly money. And the Pacers did not offer TBD on if they would have or did offer the years, but certainly less money. And if it had just been that, I think fans in Indiana would have been like, this sucks for us. We're bad you did this, but like, we get it, right? That happens to a billion players in NBA history who get offered a lot of money and they take the most money. I think what's going to be interesting about the reception is everything he said since has been viewed through a lens of him not liking the Pacers anymore because of those negotiations and not him praising the Bucks. And I think as of the day you and I are talking, I haven't listened to it yet. I've only seen clips on the internet. He went on the Thanalysis show, which is the greatest name for a podcast of all time. And it's the same thing where it's like, some of them when he was directly talking about Pacers players, that's different. But like Milwaukee praise gets, and some of it is, I believe, actually indirect shots at the Pacers, but some of it is not. And it's interpreted that way. And that's fine. Fans are allowed to feel however they want, and they don't like it. They don't like how he's spoken since at the press conference in Las Vegas about the grass being greener and, going to a contender after being half a game from the finals. Like, if you're a Pacers fan, that's going to hit you weird, right? So there should be a tribute video. I mean, 10 years is a long time. Yeah. And he played very well for them for a long time. But I wonder how much it will be cheers versus boos. My hope, I guess, as a person who talked to Myles Turner a lot, would be that it's cheers after tribute video, boos when the game starts. Yeah. But I don't expect that to be what happens. I think it's going to be
overwhelming boos, you think?
I don't think overwhelming. Like, I think people still really respect what he did for the team, but like I don't know any fan who has been like, yeah, I get what he's done the last 3.5 months.
I don't want the Bucks to win, but I hope Myles Turner.
Yeah, like I haven't heard a single one of those, right? Of course, that's part of it too that I didn't even say he didn't leave and just leave. Like he went to the Bucks after how the last few years have gone, right? So it's very layered and there's a lot to it. And I think if you're a fan versus an analyst versus whatever, how you feel about it is basically just related to that. But that makes it hard to predict the reception because he has earned cheers, to be clear, earned them, right?
Yeah.
He did not play well in the finals. Like a lot of fans were like, this is good that he has gone. And now their center rotation is not going well at all. Like there are real fans who thought that, but he played well for 10 years. Like that is a huge, significant deal in the NBA. When they drafted him, I could not legally drink, right? Like it was a long time ago. And I don't know that the reception is going to be that. And I do expect there will be boos given how, again, since it's gone since July 2nd.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like what we here in the Milwaukee area in Wisconsin have experienced on the opposite end when Craig Counsell left to go to the Cubs because, we've talked about this rivalry between the Bucks and the so like where would you rank this as a rivalry? Because Bucks fans will say like, yes, it's a rivalry. I'm not saying it isn't, but I think it's stronger on the Bucks side as with any rivalry because the Bucks haven't won those last 2 years.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is I think that the deeper hatred for the other team is the team that has lost. And like, obviously it'd be very easy for a Bucks fan to cope about why with injuries and all these things, but like the Pacers have been better, which is weird because, as you know, for the first 8 years or whatever of Giannis versus the Pacers, it was like a free win for Giannis. Like they won every time.
In fairness, it was Giannis versus every team in the Central.
True. It was like they won the one time when Thad Young shut him down in like 2017 or something. And then every game after that, the Bucks won. It was like 12 in a row or something. And then the Pacers all of a sudden were like, oh, we got this figured out. We got this. And then they, outside of early last season, were like, yep, we can handle the Bucks. And so, yeah, I think fans view it as a rivalry because of how often they've played. And if you'll remember, like Jordan Nwora played for both teams, and he was the guy who was like, oh, it's not a rivalry until we play in the playoffs. Okay, great. You did that. And then, the NBA Cup happened and all that. And of course, Oscar Tshiebwe somehow still cemented in the middle of this for Game Ball Gate. What a day that was. So it's not necessarily just that they've played all these big games. It's that like real stuff has happened. John Haliburton after Game 5, like real rivalry seeding things have happened. So Pacers fans also view it that way, to be clear. But I have a feeling it is deeper dislike in Milwaukee than Indiana.
Yeah. And maybe it started to shift now in the offseason with what happened.
Possible, yes.
I was talking with someone with the team just before the season started, and it was about a week or so before the schedule was released. And he was telling me, like, I think people will be very pleased with the opener that we get. And I didn't even think about Chris Middleton, which in some ways, like, there's a comp there too, although Middleton was traded. He didn't opt to leave via free agency, and he won a championship. But I didn't even think of that. I was just like, whoa, we're getting the Pacers as the home opener here. And man, and just thinking of the visual too of, wow, what if opening lineups come out, Myles Turner makes his entrance, he comes out through the tunnel and he's got a bag with him, and people are like, what's in the bag? And he pulls out the ball, and it's Oscar Tshiebwe's ball, and just hands it to Giannis. And that's how
Good Lord.
the Myles Turner era began.
Justin, you are admitting that you were into wrestling with this kind of this kind of showmanship.
Yeah, but I'm just curious what the reception was. Like, I was trying to think of what's the similarity here on the Bucks and I mean, I can't really think. Ironically enough, I guess the closest you would see, but nobody faulted him on the Bucks side, was Malcolm Brogdon when he left to sign that as a restricted free agent with the Pacers. But it wasn't even.
Wait, he actually is part of the story too, because if you'll remember when that happened, the Bucks had a bunch of financial restrictions or something that summer, right? And they signed Chris Middleton, and then everybody they could have still kept Brogdon like legally, right? Yeah. But they would have been like super expensive. That was what it was.
And they arguably would have won the championship the next season if they had another ball handler against Miami Heat. But nonetheless, yeah,
it was. I believe that was the specifics. And so when the Pacers and Brogdon agreed, then there was this like second layer thing where ownerships chatted and were like, wait. Instead of making restricted free agency the worst for you guys, let's do a sign and trade and give the Bucks a first round pick that ended up being RJ something. He wasn't any good.
RJ Hampton.
Which,
a classic.
And the Bucks traded the pick right,
in that era that they didn't retain anyway. So yes.
Yeah. So whatever, like on the result of that, but that happened. And so when Myles happens right this summer, first of all, before we knew the Dame thing, I was like, are the Pacers getting Kuzma? Like, how is this even legally happening? And then we learned that
must have been so thrilled.
It was a weird morning. But it was. I don't even know that I had emotions about it because it was such a short amount of time before it was like, oh, it's actually Dame is getting stretched. What? And so I think a lot of Pacers fans were like, oh, well, this sucks, but maybe this will become a sign and trade because remember the Bucks and Pacers owner. Now, granted, the Bucks have different ownership since the Brogdon thing happened, but I think some Pacers fans.
Well, I mean, there's been layers that have changed, but
yeah. But it's like not the layer, but a major layer. And so whatever. You would know. Way better than me.
But Jimmy Haslam isn't the governor, right?
Bucks listeners are like, dude, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. So regardless, I think some Pacers fans thought like, oh, great. They have this awesome ownership relationship. Like, even if it's just for a trade exception or like getting a second or something. And then the Bucks like didn't even humor that. Right. So it's like another part of this that makes people in Indiana like, what? Like, this sucks. Like, what happened? So it just, there's so many people involved in this. Oscar Tshiebwe, Jordan Nwora, and Malcolm Brogdon have all come up today. Did you expect that?
Sort of, and like the Malcolm Brogdon thing too. Now I can't remember all the details too, but the bitterness on the Bucks fan base side was everybody liked Malcolm Brogdon, and there was two camps of Malcolm Brogdon versus Eric Bledsoe. Which one should you keep? I think in hindsight, the Bucks did make the wrong call there, but they had already locked up Eric Bledsoe that spring leading into free agency. So once that happened, the writing was kind of on the wall that you knew Malcolm is probably gone here, but also the way they handled the sign and trade, like the biggest issue that Bucks fans had with it was there was no trade exception that the Bucks got back in that deal, which also could have helped them out come trade deadline to help supplement that team. So yeah, there's just for a decade now, close to it, been just this weirdness between these two teams.
That was a decade ago.
Well, I mean, what?
It's close, right?
6 years ago, so we're halfway there. Yeah,
almost 7.
Man, time is certainly a thing here. All right, so a couple of things that we've noticed from Myles Turner, and you and I talked about it when he signed here and just what to expect. But there's a couple of things that have stood out so far. One question I have about what you've witnessed through the decade in Indiana too, and in some of the splits that we've seen. We'll get into that as we continue to get set for Myles Turner's emotional return to Indiana coming up next. Your ambition just met its match with Robinhood. You play for the win, not just on game day, but every day. Locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. You channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends Advanced Tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from your money, so now expect more from yourself. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Basketball season is officially here. Nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games, but let's be real. Getting tickets can be a headache. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, prices that skyrocket right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is get in the building and cheer your team on. That's where Game Time comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. You can use Game Time to grab your seats for a couple of upcoming big games for the Bucks. We got the NBA Cup returning to Milwaukee on Friday. Kevin Durant and the Houston Rockets just a couple of days later on Sunday. Use Game Time to find those seats in minutes. What you see is what you pay. There's no hidden fees at checkout. And if you'd ever been to Fiserv Forum or any venue for that matter, you can see exactly what your view will look like within the app before you get to the final purchase. Their zone deals are a game changer. You pick the section, Game Time picks your seats, and you end up saving big. You can even find NBA tickets for under $25. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That is code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. So we talked about it when Myles Turner signed, that I think, and we heard the same complaint with Brook Lopez from a lot of Bucks fans, that if you just look at the counting numbers and you look at the basketball card stats, Myles Turner sucks at rebounding is the common complaint there.
Yes.
I think we talked about the numbers for the team's rebounding rates with him on the floor versus off, and it's similar to Brook Lopez. They were better. I think Brook's numbers were a little better than Myles, but better. I will say he's been a better rebounder than I anticipated, even knowing that so far, and albeit it's a very small sample size of games. But there's two things that have stood out for Bucks fans so far. Number one, he's not shooting the ball well at all. Like he's in the low 20s for his 3-point percentage. I think he's averaging the same amount of attempts per game as he did last year with the Pacers. But in many ways, it just reminds you of last year with Gary Trent Jr., where he started out through the first 10 plus games when the Bucks were horrible, shooting in the low 20s. And everybody's like, well, I thought he was supposed to be a good 3-point shooter. Where is this? Now, Myles splits for his career. It's not massive, but it does appear October is not his greatest efficiency month, and it picks up after that. I think that's the same for a lot of players, though. So is that in fact the case? And hey, Myles Turner is going to start hitting shots, right? Otherwise, we might have to reconsider this.
I don't necessarily have vivid memories of him as a slow starter per se. I mean, the rebounding thing is what it is. The same thing with him and Brook Lopez is they forced missed shots themselves, right? That helps everybody else rebound, even if they're not getting it. And I'm well aware of Myles' stats every game. I've watched 2 full Bucks games, but every game, again, Pacers fans who claim they don't care about him.
Paid that much money for 5
Here's
points.
a screenshot of Real App with his box score. Noticing. I'm like, okay, guys. The shooting thing isn't so for so much of his career, and really up till they got Haliburton, confidence played such a huge role in his shot. And I wonder how long it'll take Bucks fans to notice this, and maybe I'll plant it in the Milwaukee grass here. He where he lands when he shoots is indicative of his confidence, if this makes sense. If he lands a little backwards or a little to the side, he's not really locked in on his jumper.
Confident in
and
it.
and it's and sometimes he still makes it, but it's a 35 to 30% shot. If he is perfect form, straight up and down or forwards a little bit, he's money. And in his whole career, he talked about, and I think he's gotten over this a little bit now that he's a vet, but just the role confidence plays in his shot. And when he really feels good and knows he should get it up when he's open and feels good about his decision making, he'll take them and make them a lot, right? He's a very good shooter for a big man. And of course, when Haliburton got to the team, all his shots are wide open. So he's very confident and he makes more of them. And that kept going year after year. He was, close to an 18 points a game guy when they got Tyrese. And so with a new team, I'm not going to claim to know Myles Turner intimately, but from a psyche perspective, going back to the Pacers, I wonder if it's that. If it's, yes. I don't quite know everything about where I'd be successful yet. I've never played. In fact, I played against these guys. I've never played with these guys. I have to figure out where my shots are coming from, when they're coming, when Giannis passes and does not, all these things. And not to say anyone's doing anything wrong. It's just once he is more comfortable and confident, and maybe there is something to early season struggles for him. Yeah, I do think he'll shoot better. I definitely think he'll shoot better. I don't know what that will land at. And I think he's probably going to be defended differently on that team because you need 3 guys to guard Giannis, and you did not need to do that with the Pacers. But he'll shoot better than he has so far. Certainly, didn't he play pretty well against the Wizards? Because I remember in that first game being that was good job.
Yeah. I mean, overall, he's played well. I would say the only thing is that the shot just isn't falling right now, and of course, it's going to start to fall. I also kind of wonder too if part of it is, everybody on the team so far has talked about how they're surprised how much of a vocal leader Myles has been for the group so far. And a handful of the young guys especially have talked about trying to pick Myles' brain with How were you guys so good the last couple of years? What did you do differently? Like, what do we need to start to, because like the young guys are the ones that.
Has he used the power of friendship line yet to you guys?
He has not used that yet, but that is a big line. Speaking of baseball, to bring it back there, I mean, that was our Pat Murphy, the Brewers manager, and the Brewers.
No.
Really,
his thing was the pancake, man. I don't care about friendship.
Well, he also had but that's what he's known for. But yeah, like the young guys, especially, you can tell like, hey, we want to play that style. So what did you guys do? Where do we need to get to? Like, talk about your outlet passes. And that's one of the things Myles spent a day at practice going over too, of like, look, when we rebound, get here and do these things and we can start to push the pace. So overall, he's been good because I think you just witnessed to, I don't know how much of this was there before Tyrese Haliburton arrived and you guys started to play that style, but you can just see when you watch him, like, man, this is a different style than we have traditionally played. I mean, I'm not even going to compare him to Brook Lopez because obviously Myles Turner is going to move more and do more things off ball than Brook Lopez, but it's just kind of rubbed off on the team. So that's been good. His rim protection has been excellent. I think it helps to know that there's this lurking threat of Giannis behind you at any moment too. So he's had multiple blocks in every game played so far. I think he's been shorted on at least 3 blocks too by some of the home scorers, but it's just the shot not falling. And I think the one thing that Bucks fans would be like, not critical, but just urge is it seems like he's been a little gun shy. And I don't know how much of that is he's the guy that's talking about, let's push the pace, let's move the ball, let's move without the ball. And he doesn't want to be here taking all these shots, but he's had a ton of open looks that he's passed up to try to get a better shot.
I already explained that part. It's the confidence thing again, right? And go back to the Pacers again. Look at like the Bucks have played the Pacers a million times, so Bucks fans have seen this. So many possessions, 5 at this point, but yeah. How has it been over 20 times in 2 seasons? It probably has, right?
It has to, because it was 5.
It's at least 8 regular season games plus a cup game
11,
plus 11 play. Yeah, it's over 20. Like that's crazy. That is unreal for 2 seasons of time. I can't. You and I know the drive back and forth incredibly well now. When he's at the top of the key for the Pacers, he's like a fulcrum, right? And that's something their current centers are really struggling with. Of course, if he's open when he catches a pass up there, he shoots. But like with the Pacers, he would catch, and he got really good at learning. Should he go towards the guy who passed to him for a handoff? Should he turn around and swing it to the other side of the court and go screen for that guy? Or should he just shoot? And when he's confident, he knows exactly what decision to make when, boom, 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 pass. So that kind of like swinging around stuff, he's pretty good at. Like, that's not a skill that shows up in any stat. There's not a good way to describe that besides what I just did. And so I'm wondering with the Bucks, again, you're trying to fit in, you're trying to show you're a team player. If he's like, and he's not at full level of confidence with his shot, he's just moving it. And do you think he's like holding and then moving it, or is he just getting off of it when he's open? Because if it's the latter, that's exactly what I feel like he did with the Pacers a lot. He would just get off of it, and that's fine.
I would lean more towards getting off of it when he's open. Like, he's immediately looking for who has a better shot than me. And the other thing where like he killed the Bucks from that spot just beyond the free throw line in every single matchup. That's the one shot I keep waiting to fall, and it hasn't so far. You're like, man, I can.
We have to switch our front court matchup shot in the series 2 years ago. Yeah,
I can vividly remember at least 30 instances of you hitting this shot against us and thinking like, but it seems like from that spot at the top of the key, one of the things that he's like working on and I think still trying to develop that chemistry with Giannis, because we can count on one hand the number of games they've played together, is like getting to that spot and finding an opening for Giannis. Like, we've seen a couple of turnovers where he gets the ball there and just tries to hit Giannis underneath the rim. I think it's also been a foreign concept for the Bucks, in fairness, of cutting towards the rim, anybody but Giannis. So that's been part of the learning process as well. But yeah, it feels like the confidence thing is probably the best way to sum it up. And it's Myles like, I'm the new guy here. I'll tell you what we did and things that I think will work, but I'm not going to step in here and all of a sudden, like, I'm taking 20 shots and I'm the second leading scorer on the team.
Maybe one day. Like, they haven't played Detroit yet. Like, that is a match. No. Jalen Duren drop coverage. Myles Turner's like, oh, sweet. Like, there are some games where that shot that you're talking about, or shots like that, are just like there. And he just kills those teams every single season.
We could think of 20 in the last
yeah. Right. The Bucks certainly ran those coverages, and then they stopped running those coverages because Brook Lopez was guarding Pascal Siakam, which was also a little funny. So just honestly, in retrospect, that was a tougher matchup than we gave it credit for previewing the series both times.
Well, look, if you think that's a tough cover, just wait until I show you the tape of Brook Lopez on Karl Anthony Towns and how much differently that. Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking of that before we started recording and looking at the makeup of this Bucks team, which like we can get to some high picture stuff in the next segment here, but just like trying to revisit those two series and just looking at how different this team is and how like the league, how the game is played throughout the league. And like you were one of the holdout teams of like, nope, we're not doing that. Just revisiting of like, why was I so confident the Bucks were going to win? Like Giannis is the reason why, but the rest of it, if you just did a blind resume, everything you showed would say like, oh, it's clear the Pacers.
I hate to say this now, but like every Pacers person felt the same way before.
Oh, I know they did. Like I did.
Every Bucks person's like, yeah, the Bucks can win at 6. We have Giannis. Dave's healthy. We're going to be healthy by early in the series. And every Pacers person's like, yeah, we're going to win.
Yeah. I mean, I remember doing radio hits in Indiana for both years. And the first, I'll be honest.
First year, the Bucks could have won that. If Giannis came back in that series, the Bucks could have won that year.
Yes, but I think we all kind of assumed he wasn't coming back. And that first year, I was, if we're being honest, I was really kind of talking myself into like, yeah, I think they're going to win.
Okay, but like the Bucks won Game 5 without Dame or Giannis that year.
Yeah.
That was the one that was like, oh man. Like,
that was a much more, well, I mean, I guess that's the tough part is like, I was going to say that was the more flawed team, but honestly, they were both flawed, both of those years. And that's why last year though, I genuinely did feel like, okay, they're healthy. We keep hearing these murmurs and rumblings like Dame's coming back and Dame's going to play. Maybe if he can just give you something, like I like how they match up better now that they have Giannis, but yeah, in hindsight, you're like, nope. I don't think we were even playing the same sport here between these two teams.
I think the Pacers were like, this is awesome. They're not going to play their best lineup as their starting 5 till Game 4. We'll be fine.
Until the very end of it. All right. There is something to add to that. And then just the high level, what we've seen for both of these teams here. We'll get into that coming up next. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've heard them all before. It's just stress. You're tired. It happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. They make it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, so there's no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments needed, and if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors, all about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit Rugiet.com/LockedOnNBA to get 15% off your first order. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnNBA. And don't forget to use the code LockedOnNBA to get 15% off that first order. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. So the part about, oh, wow, they're not going to play their best lineup until the very, very end here. I'm not absolving Doc Rivers and the staff of not leaning into that, but I do think, which, you know, Camille and I had to try to have that conversation over the summer too. The tricky part and the tricky spot that Doc was in was I've got 5.5, 6 guys that I feel like are playable in this series. So even if I start these guys, they still played heavy minutes when he wasn't starting them. Even if I start these guys, the moment I go to the bench, it's cooked anyway.
But he's starting them now, right now. A lot of them.
Who?
AJ and Gary.
Yeah, but I mean that was the interesting part was if I could have a conversation where I know, and I'm not trying to say like, oh, I don't think Doc Rivers ever tells the truth, but if I know,
we know how much coaches do and don't tell the truth, though.
Right. If I'm getting 100% honesty here, he talked about, I think at Media Day, they had this conversation in the offseason, he and John Horst, that like basically saying this doesn't work. Like, which I think any Pacers fan, any Bucks fan that watched the series would say, yeah, we know that, but
yes,
doesn't work. And Doc said we were too passive. We had to plant our heels defensively because we knew the limitations we had. So we just kind of came to the conclusion of like, we can't do this. We have to get more athletic. How much of that, and Doc said he was kind of having those conversations throughout the course of the season too, of like, well, we're going to have to play zone. We're going to have to do this. Like, how much did those come up? And if that's the case, like, having said what I just said about, well, when you go to the bench, why didn't we see that leaned into much earlier than, okay, Damian Lillard's down, we got to radically change our lineups to the final 8 games, we're doing this?
My question with that kind of stuff is always this. Like, I don't know this, but my assumption for being around NBA teams for a long time is there's always people who want it to happen earlier than it does, and there's people who don't. And there's a moment that makes it click for everybody finally, right?
Yeah.
So you wonder when, Taurean Prince and Kuzma are starting, and it's just not working at all. Like, what is the game or moment in that series where the person on that side was like, fine, you're right. Like, that's what I always wonder with those kind of, because that's almost always how it happens or starts to happen. And then they right now, I mean, KPJ's hurt, but like they have it right to me. And look at that.
Yes.
Giannis looks awesome. And this group looks pretty good as we kind of shift to talking about the teams. Like they've got it right at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking with somebody else too, who mentioned like, I think a lot of times, and I won't name who pushed back on this because there was a few of us having the conversation at one of the games, and an unnamed person pushed back when one of the individuals was like, don't get me wrong, they're in a much better spot now with their athleticism and their perimeter defense and everything else. But I do think a lot of times some of the pushback on somebody who used to play point guard for this team can be overblown and just exaggerated because of everything else. And somebody pretty connected to the team, like, no, it's not overblown. Like, we love the guy. He was obviously a great person, great teammate, certainly one of the best offensive players ever. No, it is not overblown. Like, that's what, and think about 2 years ago. If that's your defensive backcourt is Dame and Malik Beasley, and you're just telling you're telling Brooke and Giannis, go get him.
That is still maybe the funniest clip of an NBA game ever is Beasley guarding Haliburton. Beasley guarding Haliburton and looking away for a sec and just freezing when the doesn't, not even like a little lean or anything. He's just frozen as the draft happens.
I was going to say which one. You'd have to be more specific.
Which is crazy because he just had an awesome season last year.
He did, yeah.
Yeah. The Bucks are good and the Pacers are not, Justin. I think that's where we're
well, and that's like we're still like you guys probably went through this 3 years ago ish. Like when you started to see the pieces coming into play with Haliburton in that, like, I don't know how good this Bucks team is. I think anybody can tell you that. There's a lot of like, I've already seen why can't this team win mid-50s? Like, let's maybe get to December and see how this is going first. Like 55 is still a lot.
Do those people remember that the Bucks started bad last year and finished good? Like, it is possible to dramatically swing your start to the season.
I don't know how good they are. I do think they're better than they were a season ago because of how they're set up and what they can do differently. But it's so far, a week plus into the season, it's been a much more fun experience than either of the previous 2 seasons, which is crazy for a team that had Giannis and Damian Lillard, that you're like, this is just more enjoyable. And like, I don't feel like it's a chore to watch parts of this team at times. They're not like the fastest team, but they're playing at a more up-tempo pace. And, you talked about Myles' comments and whether or not there were coded shots at the organization or how deeply that went. We've started to hear some of that from Giannis recently too, where you kind of wonder, like, I don't think you totally mean it this way, but I wonder how much of it you do when he was talking about, like, this team's built to win. We have guys that can shoot and play defense, and we compete every single night. And that wasn't the case in the past. You're like, well, are you singling out guys that aren't here anymore that a lot of people had similar complaints about? Or is this just a general, hey, this is a young, energetic team that like wants to win every single time they take the floor?
That sounds like a good way to win games. Right. It's just crazy how much speed is helping them. Like, it's just an element they were missing.
Yeah, what a thought. Like, to have speed, athleticism, and to have guys that, even if they're not all defense caliber players, are just not liabilities up and down the roster. Like, wow, amazing what that'll do for you.
You know what's crazy is the Pacers played the Mavs the night before you and I were recording this, and they were talking about J. Kidd playing Cooper Flag at the 1 and how that actually in the long term helped Giannis. And I'm like, that actually this year, that's a good point. Pioneer Jason Kidd.
Yeah, I mean, I think Giannis probably had a little more athleticism than Cooper Flag, but so we'll continue to see where this Bucks team goes. As you know, we mentioned we're recording this earlier because of some scheduling conflicts for both of us. The Bucks have the Warriors tonight, which is a very interesting matchup for them because traditionally Golden State has struggled with athleticism and size, and the Bucks have always had one of the two. Now they might have both of the two, so I'm curious to see that matchup.
You know, it's funny you say that. I used to think of the Bucks as just like team long arms, like they could just stand everywhere. Yeah. Now they're not that, but they're still good.
Getting some of it back now, but yeah, they used to be like it was the John Hammond staple of like, let's
John
just build
Henson
a team
back
that's
there.
long but can't shoot. For you guys though, so I guess first, what were the expectations like broadly among Pacers fans that you got the sense coming into the season?
That they'd be okay. I mean, even in past years without Haliburton, they were, they'd win 4 out of 9 or, whatever. It's not good, but like that's survivable. And then without Haliburton and Turner, they went like 2-2 or something, right? And so the thought is about that. Like you can win high 30s to 40 games, but of course, a lot of their players are young. So if they all get better, plus you actually can plan for not having those guys, they would be, I predicted 40 wins of their 80 scheduled games before the season. They're 0-4, so us talking. And the problem is two things. It's one, that the stuff that you'd expect, like figuring out what you are and how you're going to play without Tyrese. 6 of their top 8 guys from last year are not on the team, like available right now. Myles in Milwaukee, and then Tyrese Haliburton, Ben Mathurin, TJ McConnell, Obi Toppin, Andrew Nembhard are all hurt. Like, what do you do? What you just
confirm
lose.
That's tough to win when that's the case.
Like, no offense. Like they just lost by 2 in Dallas. They could have won the game, but like you just lose when you're missing that many guys. It's hard to accept that as a fan. Like you think you can win. They played well. They've had chances. They've lost 3 clutch games, but like it's hard. It's really hard. There's not a lot to say about the team because they're so hurt.
Yeah, and like so before we were recording, we were kind of talking about too where things are headed, and I guess the outside view for me, and I think a lot of Bucks fans, well, I don't know, the Bucks fans would say, hey, they would want the Pacers to keep losing and not win the lottery, but like the outside view is probably, well, I mean, is this a blessing in disguise? Like you don't have Haliburton this season. It's a pretty good draft. Like see if you can strike the lottery here and get a really good draft pick and then retool for next season.
We'll find out how they feel about that. Maybe not actually, but like in mid-November, check on the Pacers because a couple of things. One, they'll be healthier, presumably, given some timelines of players. But 2, their first 10-game schedule is like brutal. Like people were predicting they would start 2-8 before they knew of all these non-Haliburton injuries, or 3-7 here at least. So this actually could be a decent time to lose all your players. Maybe you go 2-8 anyway, and then you're not actually that far behind when you're healthy. If they get to mid-November and they play Toronto, Utah, Charlotte, Toronto again, Washington, Chicago. I guess Chicago's actually good. By the end of the month, like if their record is bad by the end of November, then it might be like, oh man, like where do your priorities actually go? Because like I ran through the whole schedule game by game. I thought they'd be 1-3 right now. They're 0-4. Okay, like whatever. It's 1 game difference. But if by the end of the month, it's like that month, it's still looking rough for like they're wandering. Yeah, then you gotta really talk about where you're going and what's going on.
Yeah, and I would just remind you, 2-8 is not a death sentence. It still sets you up to make the playoffs and lose in the first round.
As the Bucks know well from last year, right? That's a good point. I'm actually going to use that on Locked On Pacers several times. I was going to ask you a question though. Were the Bucks like supremely hurt after their title the following year? Because Rick Carlisle has brought up now that not only the Pacers really hurt, the Thunder are also very hurt at the moment. Yeah, and I think the NBA is more demanding now than it was 3 years ago. But like, how hurt were the Bucks the following year?
It got interesting. So, I mean, like the big one is that was the year that Brook Lopez missed 2/3 of the season. And that like was just the utter mystery of he played on ring night. He looked good. And then they played in Miami game number 2 and got blown out by like 50 points or something. And Brook wasn't there. And it was like Brook was an Iron Man. I think he had missed 3 games total in his previous, what that was 4th season in Milwaukee leading up to that. So everybody's like, wow, that's weird. Brook's already missing a game here. And then it was just this mysterious out indefinitely. So like that was a big piece of it. And it just forced you to have to do things like playing Sandro Mamukelashvili much, much earlier and having to really lean on him, Giannis and Bobby minutes. And that was last year, that duo was good. Back then it was not. They just, for whatever reason, the numbers weren't pretty together. And a few other guys missed like around your 15-ish games total. But it did feel like it was a team that was fatigued as you got, because I think it was twofold with the Bucks.
COVID timing was different too.
Well, yeah, like the calendar was different. And plus you had Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton played in the Olympics. So they win the championship. 3 days later, fly to Japan, play in the Olympics, and basically got 3 weeks of an off season before the season started right back up again. You could just see as the season went on, it felt like a team that was kind of saving themselves and preserving themselves for the postseason. And then, injuries, that's when it started with Chris slipping on the wet spot. And
this is an awesome team in retrospect.
I still will go to my grave.
Boogie, DiVincenzo, Serge Ibaka, Semi Ojeleye, Rodney Hood. This team is awesome.
Semi Ojeleye.
I thought Semi Ojeleye was going to be good. That dude was a brick wall.
We all did. We thought Semi Ojeleye and Rodney Hood's an interesting signing too. Now, at least they flipped them and were able to use that for trades.
And hey, people forget Bucks legend Luke Cornett was on that team.
Luke Cornett was on that team. The Boogie one was very polarizing. There was a lot of Bucks fans that were like, how are we not retaining this guy? A lot of others that watched the games and looked at the numbers and said, no, this does not fit our defensive culture here for this group. And you had the ill-fated Dante DiVincenzo traded to the Kings in a 3-way deal for Serge Ibaka as the Brook Lopez insurance because they had just re-signed or they had just re-upped Grayson Allen and knew like we're not going to sign Dante, so let's get some Brook Lopez insurance here.
Looking back at this on Basketball Reference, Bobby Portis was the only guy to play over 67 games.
Yeah.
So I'm going to regurgitate these things to Pacers people at some point.
It was just a worn down team, and then when Chris went down. As like we were both kind of saying, it sounded like I will still go to my grave saying if Chris Middleton doesn't get injured, the Bucks win the championship that season again. At the very least, they're in the finals. When they lost to the Celtics too, which in hindsight, how the hell did they take the Celtics to 7 games?
Yeah, that's
just Giannis and no offense. But when they lost that, you could just see it felt like they were disappointed, but like the weight was off of them now. Like, all right, now we get to rest. And that's been the biggest shame in these last few years was I think every single Bucks fan watched that series and that performance through the playoffs and just felt like, we're obviously bummed that they lose in the second round after just winning the championship, but that team went out on their sword and that team went out fighting. So can't wait to see what next year brings. I'm not going to say they weren't fighters the last 2 years, but it was not the same feeling as that year. 3 years for that matter, when they lose to the Heat in the first round the next year.
Yes. What a series that was. I'm out of title hangover questions. The Bucks or the Pacers didn't win a title, but post finals hangover questions.
Long story short, you guys are set up for the 1 seed next year, and then we'll see where it goes from there. Maybe it means it's another first.
You heard it here first, everybody.
Should be an interesting one in the arena Monday night. Bucks and the Pacers. You're
coming, right?
No, scheduling conflicts.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I will say this as we start to wrap here. So I had time set up with each of the players on media day, and I only got like 30 seconds with Myles, and he was supposed to come back afterwards for something else, but never got that revisit from him. So Myles Turner was like Myles and obviously one other guy who wasn't in Milwaukee were the 2 guys I didn't get extensive time with. But when I did briefly talk with him, I did mention like, I know Tony East pretty well and sends his regards. He had no idea who you were.
Wow.
No, I'm kidding. So Tony's the best was his message.
He was very nice to me at his press conference, which I personally, Pacers people kept saying, "Oh man, you were at that presser," and I'm like, "Yeah, what'd you think?" And they were like, "Yeah, he said a lot of weird stuff." I'm like, "The weirdest thing he said was that he thinks I'm a good dude." So, among the many things he said, that was probably the worst, right?
Yeah, like I'm just curious to see now in the days that lead up to it, like what media, if any, Myles Turner does leading up to it. What the actual tribute video is going to be like. What if they don't even give him one?
They have to, dude. You have to, dude. People get it for nothing now, like legitimately nothing.
Yeah, I mean,
Sabonis got one for the Pacers, and he was there for 4 or 5 years, and he was obviously like a higher peak, but did not make the finals. Didn't win anything. Like Turner's getting one.
Yeah, and just the post game too. Like, there's going to be a lot of Indiana reporters in the Bucks locker room after that game too. So
Eric Name and I are best buds, so we'll be following each other around all day.
It's going to be fascinating to see what that reaction is for Myles Turner, and I think too to see the emotions of Myles Turner, like because he knows what he's done with some of the things he said and taken but like now you're back there in it. So like, how are you going to deal with this? And especially if it is, a majority of boos or at least like 50-50 jeers that you're dealing with, like what do we see from Myles Turner in that aspect of the game, if that's the case?
It'll be fascinating. It'll truly fascinating.
It'll be fascinating. It just makes this matchup between these two teams all the more interesting. It's always something new with these two teams, the Bucks and the. I got some John Haliburton stories too that we can get into on a future recording. In my experiences,
I hope he goes. Not because it'll be weird, but because it'd be good to smooth over. Like just by being there, it'd smooth things over a tiny bit. Just go.
Yeah, and like I think. I didn't anticipate to go down this road, but fine. I brought up the name. So like, I think John Haliburton plays the role too. Like that's not who he really is. He leans into the character that you see and that you experience in the arena. Like everybody in Milwaukee has seen him and taken pictures like, oh, there's Tyrese Haliburton's dad. Like he loves that. And he really plays into it. So I think that's a lot.
He's like a ref legend in Milwaukee, right? He like refs a bunch of young.
In Oshkosh, yeah.
In Oshkosh, yeah. He refs a bunch of games. Yeah.
All right, should be a fun one. Myles Turner making his return to Indiana, and you, of course, will break it down on Locked on Pacers. We'll do the same on our show as well. Always good to catch up with you, Tony.
It's a great time. They don't go to Milwaukee till February, so I'll see you at some point this season.
Yeah, that'll do it for today's show. For Tony, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow.